This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Point. I'm Cheryl Ross, the Next Steps in Discipleship pastor here at Southridge Church. And before we go any further, I just want to make sure that if you haven't liked or subscribed to this podcast, that you go ahead and do so. That way you don't miss out on any new content. Pastor Scott is with me today, and we have been in our Christmas series, Naughty or Nice. We covered a nice list character, Mary, this past Sunday. And you shared how God doesn't have normal in store for us. Yeah. Give us a brief overview about this teaching and what that really means for us.
Yeah, so Mary, what we find out in the first couple verses that introduce us to Mary is that she is engaged to be married to a guy named Joseph, which probably in our 2024 Western context, the whole situation seems a little weird. It's like a 14-year-old girl, most likely engaged to an older guy. Why is she already engaged when she's 14? The significance of engagement was on par with how we view marriage today is how they would have viewed even engagement. It was very significant. But what that meant for her was that she was essentially just settling in to the pretty status quo life of a Jewish female in the first century. They were going to get married young, have kids, raise nice, well-rounded, Torah-following Jewish boys and girls. They would take care of the home. That was sort of their situation in life. Really, most of their prospects in life were just tied to marriage. And so Mary is heading for the prototypical normal Jewish life. And that's what most everyone around her would have been experiencing as well. And then she has this encounter with the angel Gabriel that tells her that her life is going to be anything but normal, that she's going to birth the Messiah, the Son of God, Son of the Most High. He says it many different ways in that passage, and the way that this is going to come about is not going to be through normal procreative means by any necessary, but it's going to be through the power of the Holy Spirit, power of God, doing a work in and through her for this to happen. And sometimes, I said it on Sunday, sometimes we have a tendency to glamorize, Mary knew how blessed she was. You can go and read that in Mary's Magnificat and stuff. But I would still argue there was no way that this was an easy time for her, that she would have indeed been the talk of the town. I mean, just imagine if you had someone in your hometown pregnant, and their defense because Jewish men and women that were, devout like Mary and Joseph most likely were, since they were the ones chosen to do this. They would have been following Torah when it came to biblical sexuality and purity and things like this. And so how do you explain to people that are not living together, not sleeping together, how do you explain in good terms that Mary's pregnant? Yeah. And the whole time Joseph's going, I didn't do that. It wasn't me. And so you have a lady in your town just going around saying, hey, I'm pregnant, but don't worry, it's God's. I think we've just heard the Christmas story far too many times for us to think that this is just something normal. It's like, oh, yeah, no big deal. Just someone that's pregnant without, there being an earthly father. No, that's not a category that we really have.
Right.
And so God was calling her to something miraculous and not that normal life that she had expected by any means. But she was also being called to something very difficult and something that would probably be painful in some ways as well. And so I just used that to talk about, I'm just convinced, even though I'm certain the details look different, if we were to speak in like broad strokes, the vast majority of people just want the normal American dream. Mm-hmm. That's what they want. They want nice jobs that they can pay their bills and have a little left over to do whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. They want to raise nice, well-rounded, successful kids that will go to college mm-hmm. or get, normal jobs that will then just perpetuate the normalcy of the family. Like, this mm-hmm. is just what we do or whatever. I think that's just what most people want. And then if you start thinking, like I didn't do it in this sermon, but like if you just start thinking, like what is normal in a lot of ways? Well, normal when it comes to marriage is divorce. That's pretty normal nowadays. Or normal is people that have just horrible marriages, people that are just basically roommates at this point. That's pretty normal. Trying to find a thriving marriage is actually pretty miraculous, to be honest. What about in your finances? Being deeply into debt, in consumer debt, and spending beyond your means and living paycheck to paycheck. Oh, that's normal. Like you start thinking about what's normal. What's normal when you're dating? You live together, you sleep together. Even though we know that the studies show that normally doesn't go well in those relationships. What's normal? Kids start getting cell phones in elementary school with very little oversight as to what they're accessing. Yeah. Oh, that's normal. Yeah. What's normal? Filling up your calendar and saying yes to absolutely everything. That's normal. Well, we just can't believe that they're not going to be involved in soccer this year. We just can't believe that they're not going to do this year. We can't believe, that's normal to just have your calendar completely filled up and let your kids decide. What's normal is to educate your kids like everybody else educates their kids. What's normal is to expect the church to disciple your kids and have no discipleship at home. What's normal is to overwork yourself. So in so many ways, we're just settling for normal. And God wants something miraculous instead in your life. And I know that sometimes it feels like, well, maybe, is he talking about everyone just needs to quit their job and go into ministry or be a missionary? No, I'll tell you right now, it would be miraculous to find an 8th grader that didn't have access to the internet on their phone. That would be miraculous at this point for me. It would be, didn't have access to the internet, or if they had access to the internet, had people watching what it is that they're accessing. That would be miraculous. Yeah. To me, to watch people that are on the verge of divorce not go through with the status quo of, well, we're just, we're already this far down the path, we're just going to divorce, and watch them actually fight for restoration, that would be miraculous to me. To watch someone that is addicted to drugs and alcohol to get set free, that would be miraculous. To find somebody who, these could even be changes in our character, to find someone that's always grumpy and grouchy and negative, and now they're kind and loving and generous. To find someone that is stingy with their money and doesn't give faithfully, and then to find them being one of the more generous people. These would all be miracles. So it's not just, every time we talk about this, we're not talking about, quit your job and start a ministry or whatever. And for some people, that may be the uncomfortable but miraculous thing God wants to birth in you. But sometimes it might be for us, we're going to open the Bible with our kids 3 times a week at home. That would be miraculous to find a family that does that. Yeah. Or, hey, we've been doing, parenting this way for all of this time. And some of this is I think some of it, you would even have to walk back decisions that you made in previous seasons. Hey, you know what? We did let our kids have cell phones too early, and it's going to be a weird transition, but we're gonna walk that back. Yeah. Or, hey, we've always let our kids have access to any television shows or whatever that they want in their television in their room where no one has. You know what? We're going to walk that back. We go. You know what? We don't think that was actually a wise decision. That might actually. There might be people you have relationships with that you go, you know what? In one season that kind of made sense, but in this new season, I don't know that those relationships are good for us and our kids. We're going to actually walk that back. And seeing people make those sort of substantive, it's going to cost me decisions would be miraculous, rather than just staying for normal, which is now we just, there's the relationships we have, there's the decisions we made, now we just got to live with it. It's like, no, like it's not too late. You can actually like drastically, like again, our kids go to private Christian school. I don't have that conviction that everyone should do that.
Right.
However, if you felt like God was calling you to go from public school to homeschool or to private school or from private school to public school or whatever, it's like a change of what it is that you're currently doing, that would be miraculous for someone to actually uproot their family and go, all right, this is all we've ever known, but now we're going to shift over and do that. Like that would be like my buddy in Tennessee, they did that like 6 or 7 years ago with their family. His wife just felt called to homeschooling their kids. It was something that was never on their radar. These were people whose family members were active in public school as teachers and administrators and things their whole life, fully believed in public school. And out of nowhere, God goes, I want you to homeschool your kids. And on the drop of a hat, he goes, I don't even know if we can do this, but we're going to. That's a miraculous thing to watch somebody do something so drastic, because most of us, we just settle for our lot in life and we go, all right, well, this is just it. Because it's one of those things that maybe you heard the sermon, you go, well, I think in a lot of ways that we are living different than everyone else. Because okay, that may be true, and if so, congratulations. But I promise you, it's not the end of the road of what God wants to do. There's always something more miraculous that God wants to do in and through you. That I think that there's people that have books and businesses and things that are within them that they've never even thought, they were just told, hey, grow up, go to college, get you a good job, work that job faithfully, you'll rise in the ranks. They haven't even thought for a second, like, man, maybe God has that for you. Maybe that's fine. But maybe on the side, he wants you to do whatever it might be. Or maybe right now you've been coming to church for a couple of years, you're not really involved, and you feel God just nudging you like, hey, I got to do something. All right, what might that thing be? For some of you, it would be miraculous for you to go and work in our kids' ministry, to go work in youth ministry, to work in the worship ministry, to work in the prayer ministry, to step out of your comfort zone and put other people in front of yourself would be miraculous. So it's not all like just, I quit my job and now I'm a pastor. It's like, no, that happens. And I'm certain that that's going to happen for more and more people in our church. But like, it could be any number of things where you have settled for what quote unquote is normal and decided, you know what, I'm not going to be normal. I'm going to allow God to transform and change me even when it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned in your sermon that you said that you're called to faithfulness, but God is responsible for it. So these things that you've been talking about, how does this statement, this idea, help us to actually complete what it is that God has called us to?
I think a lot of times when we feel God kind of nudging us, we go, well, just like Mary, explain this to me, Lord. How's this going to work out? Because we want to know. Like we're all naturally control freaks, and so even when it's dealing with God, we go, okay, God, that's fine. You want us to educate our kids in a different way. You want us to discipline our kids in a different way. You want us to parent our kids in a different way. You want me to take a different job. You want me to start a side hustle. You want me to whatever it is, and you go, but how's it really going to work out? Right? Like this was one of those things for us. Whenever we felt God opened up a door for our kids to go to the school that they're going to, and for me, I struggled the most with something so like worldly, and it was athletics. I was like, I always wanted my son to play baseball where I played baseball. I wanted him to have those opportunities to be seen by scouts and all of this stuff. And so it really was a struggle because I was going, well, how's this going to work if we're going to give them a chance to set them up for a good life? And you should want to set your kids up for good lives. I was like, is this going to get in the way of that? But at some point, I just had to go, you know what? I think God's sovereign at the end of the day, and I don't. If God's plan is for my kids to excel in sports, He can do that anywhere. Right? We all want to know how this is going to work. Like, okay, Lord, if I really do leave my job and go and work at a church, or if I do leave my job and go start a new business, how are we going to pay our rent this month? Like, we want to know that sort of stuff. And what I'm saying is, whatever it is, if God is actually the one calling you to it, it's not just some clever idea that you had or some way that you feel like, oh, I could get ahead in life this way. Like, if God's really calling you to it, your only role is faithfulness. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, we'll switch schools. We'll take the cell phones away. We'll take the Xbox away. Whatever. Like, we'll change jobs. We'll stay whenever we really want to leave. Whatever it is. That's all you're supposed to do. You be faithful to what he told you to do. How that whole thing ends up, that's up to God. Like when the angel tells Mary that the baby to be born is going to be God's son. Yes, it's telling us there's going to be a unique relationship between this baby and God, and we know that baby's going to be God in this divine mystery of the Trinity. But the other thing that means is that this baby is first and foremost belongs to God. Before that's Mary's boy, this is God's. Yeah. And so whatever it is, if that decision, you go, man, I feel like if we do this in our family, this is going to be a disaster. You be faithful. You let God worry about the outcome of it. You let God figure out how you're going to pay your rent. You just be faithful. You let God figure out how your kids will transition into a new season of life. You let God deal with all the stuff that you're asking. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know if it doesn't even seem rational. You let God deal with all of that. And you just simply say yes.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, whatever it is that gets birthed in and through you, new habits, new life, new businesses, whatever it might be, whatever gets birthed in and through you belongs first and foremost to God, because if he's the one that started the process, then it was his idea to begin with, so it's his.
Yeah.
It's not yours. That's one of the things I've learned about in preaching is like I'll be writing sermons, and I've learned to, when I get to the end of it, if I feel really, really good about it, I will not say, like I'll be kind of talking through my head and talking with the Lord, I'll go, essentially, I'll say something like, God, you are really good at this, because I know that there's no way that I just came up with this.
Yeah.
I know, like 2 hours ago, I had no idea what I was getting ready to do or say. So I know you are really good at doing this, because before that sermon is not mine. That's something that God did. It's not mine. He actually cares about it even more than I do. Yeah. I'm just supposed to be the one that's faithful to study, to put the time in to write, to hone my craft and get up and to say it. But at the end of the day, that thing was God's to begin with. I didn't come up with this whole idea that Mary was living a normal life and heading for a normal life, and then God interrupted. I didn't come up with that. It's not last Monday and Tuesday when I'm sitting there just studying, I'm going, the Christmas story is so hard to preach, because we're expected to do it every single year. Yeah. And we're expected to come up with new ideas about this every single year. Right. It's very difficult. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there Monday and Tuesday, because I think I wrote it on Tuesday. So I'm sitting there Monday and half a day Tuesday going, I don't even know what this thing is like. What? And then by the end of the day, the sermon's written. I go, yeah, that's because God is so good at doing that.
Right.
It's his. It's not mine. And it'll be the same for you. Whatever it is, you just be faithful. You leave the results up to God.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's the kind of thing that, like I've been saying, because we're preparing for another short-term mission trip to Ecuador, and several people are like, I really want to go. I just don't know, if I feel like I'm supposed to go, but where's the money going to come from? And I'm like, look, just sign up. Just make that commitment. If you feel that God is calling you to do this, he's going to help you with the money. Just trust him in the process. And so it's been cool to see a few people fully commit and say, okay, I'm in. Yeah. And they still are like, well, I don't know, but I'll do all these things. I'll do the fundraisers and I'll figure it out. Or let God figure it out. And so it's been that's been a really cool thing to see.
Here's an example just from last night. Especially if it's like, man, I don't know. I feel called to go on this mission trip, but I don't know where the money's going to come from. Last night, yesterday afternoon, I invited my daughter to go on a date with me. It's something we just try to do just periodically. I said, Olivia, do you want to go on a date with me tonight? We'll go out to dinner. She said, yes. Okay. So her father asked her to do something? She says yes. She shows up. So we go, we have our dinner. When the bill came, nobody expected Olivia to grab the bill.
Yeah.
No, Olivia wasn't sitting there stressing going, oh, my dad invited me to this dinner, but I don't know how I'm going to pay for it.
Right.
If dad invited you to dinner, dad's going to take care of the bill. And so if God is calling you to do something that is outside of your comfort zone, I need you to know that dad is going to take care of the bill. If he's the one that called you to it, he's the one that will, it's his bill to pay. It's his responsibility. If he's the one, it would be outrageous to think God calls you to things that he will not fund, that he will not take care of, that he will not oversee. If you get into those situations, then what's happening is you are actually not hearing from the voice of God, and you're just doing whatever it is that you want. You go, well, I thought, we felt like we were going to buy this house, and the funding fell through. You go, yeah, of course it did. If it wasn't in God's will, the funding did fall through.
Yeah.
He's not going to pay that bill for you if you were about to make a stupid decision.
Yeah.
No way. But whenever the time is right, if he leads you to it, he will take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you continue to take those faithful steps too, I think, because I think sometimes we might do the thing and then we're stupid in other areas and we don't really make the best decisions along the way as well. But you did a little sidetrack about Elizabeth in the story because she is part of the story, and talked about how, her past didn't define her. Like what was once true about her is no longer true about her in this current season. And so in the same way, our past doesn't define us. Let's share a little bit about, I know there's a personal story with you, but how does that look, and how can that help also free us? Because I think some of these things are things that might keep us from being faithful, from doing the thing, from allowing God to birth that in or through us. So let's talk about practically what this looks like in our lives.
Yeah, I wanted to make the whole sermon about this, but since we were already set to talking about Mary, I was like, I don't feel like I should change I wanted to make the whole about this one little statement where the angel goes, and your cousin Elizabeth is now pregnant, and people used to say she was barren. And that, right there hit me so hard, as I was like, that means Elizabeth is now fruitful, even though people used to say she was barren. That's, for me, I go, so there's people that, in one season they were addicted, but in the next season they're free. In one season your marriage is on life support, and in the next season your marriage is thriving. In one season you're sick, but in the next season you're healed. In one season you're unemployed, you're employed in the next. One season you're paycheck to paycheck living off of credit cards, and in the next season you're thriving and generous. Whatever it was that they used to say about you. And here's the thing that I wanted to point out. It was 100% true. Elizabeth was barren. She was old and she ain't have no kids. 100% true. You might really have been a scoundrel, okay? You might really have been, an unkind person. You might have been a liar. You might have been promiscuous. It was true about her. It might be true about you, but it doesn't have to stay true. That's the thing. What I keep seeing over and over in people's lives is God doing this. You go that is who I used to be that. I'm not that anymore. There's something different that has taken place in my life. I used to be that person, and now I'm not. And this is true of all of us, whether you're just new into the faith or even following the Lord for almost 15 years now. It's there was stuff that was true of me early on in my walk with Jesus that's not true of me now. There's stuff that's true about me right now that's not going to be true in another 15 years. The Lord's always changing us in that way. But there might have been something because I think what happens is then we go, well, Lord, you want me to, do, you fill in the blank. But then you go, but don't you remember what I did when I was in college? Don't you remember how bad off financially we are right now, God? And so I don't know if we could really make this happen. And the Lord's going, yeah, that might be true of you then, but you have no idea what I have in store for you in the future.
Yeah.
There could be a totally different name or label or what you're being called in a different season based on, compared to where you previously used to be.
Yeah.
And that statement just spoke to me so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
About just the hope that, like, if you're in a situation right now, if you're in a place right now, it's not where you want to be and it's not where God wants you to be, you don't actually have to stay there.
Yeah.
Like, you can actually get up and leave. Like, you are not prisoner to whatever it is that you feel is holding you back. Like, you can just shrug that thing off and move into a new season.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that, like, it may take some time for some people to realize that. Like, for Elizabeth, even, in the first several months of a pregnancy, like, not a lot of people know but you, right? Like, until you start showing some signs of it, it's not necessarily noticeable and to everybody outside of the main thing. And so, like, I think that's important to remember too, is that, like, it may not be showing to other people as you're doing this, as God is changing you, as you're taking that step to be faithful. It may not be evident to other people yet, but as you go and as time goes, like, there will be fruit that will be seen along the way. And so just staying hopeful, staying faithful in that. And then I think, like, ending it on this note of, that God didn't say that it was going to be easy. Like, he never promised Mary it was going to be easy. Yeah. She knew this was going to be tough. like, but he said it was possible.
Yeah, I think it's verse 37 for my favorite translation is the NIV, but I don't preach from it just because NLT reads a little better for our folks. But it says for nothing is impossible with God, and it just hit me when I was preaching Sunday. Really, it was like, you get these people like I don't know how many people know this story, but like Thomas Jefferson was a big fan of the teachings of Jesus, but wanted to remove all supernatural things from the Bible. So he just went through the Gospels and essentially clipped out all of the supernatural happenings in there whatsoever. Because he goes, it's just not possible. These things can't happen. You can't turn 5 loaves and 2 fish into a meal for 20,000 people. You can't walk on water. These are physical impossibilities. Now, and there's plenty of people that still do that today. They go, there's no way a fish could swallow a guy, scientifically speaking. I go, and listen, I am a gigantic fan of science. I think science and Christianity go very well together. I do not think they're in conflict one bit. But what happens is, the mistake that gets made is if you go, a guy can't walk on water, and I'll go, well, duh. Nobody's saying that a guy can walk on water. We're saying that when God chooses to intervene into the course of human history, he can do whatever he wants. So it's like, if you start like making points as like you're making a supernatural statement but removing the supernatural cause, it's like, of course you can't just if I went and tried to walk on water right now, I'm going to fall in. That's the laws of nature. That's the way that it goes. If God, however, decided to allow me to walk on that water, that's a different conversation. That's in a different really area of expertise. So we're not saying that these things happen naturally. I think that's the mistake that's being made. It's like, oh, these things happen No. Our case is there is a supernatural being that exists, and if a supernatural being exists, then supernatural happenings will occur. And so at that moment, there is no longer a category that's called impossible. If God does exist and is active in human history and in human lives, impossible doesn't exist. Things that are not in his will, things that he will not allow to exist, but impossible is no longer a category where we go, a woman can't get pregnant without there being an earthly father. He goes, you're 100% right. That's what every science textbook, that's what all the medical students are learning right now, of how babies are born, of how they come to be. We're all learning that. We know that. That's 100% true, unless there's a God. And then if there's a God, then truthfully, God could allow people to get pregnant for his purposes in any way that he saw fit. So there's no longer a category called impossible. However, that did not mean that whatever it was going to be easy.
Right.
So you go, there's no way we could make these sorts of changes in our family. It's just impossible. He goes, no. Definitely possible. Might hurt like crazy. Kids might not like you for a while. You know, you might have to learn to tell yourself no every once in a while. You might have to get better friends, like we talked about a little bit on Sunday. Not impossible, but probably painful, sure.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, with that, I'll leave you with those ideas and concepts to be able to put into practice, to stay faithful, to remember that your past hasn't defined you and that it may not be easy, but with God, it is possible. We'll be right back here again next week with another deep dive from our series of Naughty or Nice and give you some more practical next steps for your faith journey.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.